Um, the meaning of this webinar is to show you a little bit the highlights of this intermediate version 2013.1. You might already heard that our version 14 will be released in spring of next year. So this intermediate version allows us to keep you up to speed with some developments we already finished, and allows you to bring those developments directly to you. Okay, so during this webinar I will show you some things using a PowerPoint presentation because it's a little bit easier and faster, but I will also show you some things live directly in the software. Okay, let's start. So I would like to start with the topic of seismicity. Seismicity is a topic which is already for a long time in Scia Engineer. We were aware that we had to do something to increase the functionality in seismicity. We already did something in version 2013. And let me just give you an overview of what version 2013 brought us. First of all, we had the automatic update of masses. We included the properties of seismic load cases directly in the properties of the load case, so no double dialogues anymore. We also introduced the improved reduced seismicity, which is in fact an approach where you reduce the building into, let's say, a member model, a bar model with reduction of the masses per story into nodes, which allows you to reduce the number of degrees of freedom considerably. In this example, you see that we go from about 42 degrees of freedom to up to 24. And this allows you to do a first run of the seismic analysis on your building, because it's typically a functionality which applies to buildings. Allows you to eliminate the local modes in your system, and also leads to a better distribution of the modal mass. Using this compact mass matrix, you can get faster results, which are then again extrapolated into the original loads and give you a first impression of how your building behaves under seismic loads. Now, what did we do on did we else do in 13.0 is also improved modal superposition for the resultants. And we had some accidental eccentricities introduced into the software. And story results, results per story, where you could specify which values you wanted to see on the structure. What is new in 13.1? Well, in 13.1 we introduce rotational mass participation factors. We will introduce also interstorey drifts, which you can see in the preview or in your engineering report. We will also have more detailed story results for nonlinear analysis results. And it's not quite finished yet. We are still working on it, but it will be released in the first patch of 13.1, which is modal filtering and rotational modal masses. If you have more questions on all the functionalities in seismicity and the new things in 13.1, you can post them in the chat box below. Other questions as well. We'll get back to it later on. Seismicity is a very specific topic, so it might be possible that we have to include our specialists on the matter. And anyway, we will distribute all the questions and their answers to any participant afterwards, along with the recording of this session. Okay, second topic is concrete. Concrete is something which is there since a long time, and which was subject of improvements, continuous improvements. Now you all know that since the years 1990, there was an incredible boost in computer performance. Processors got higher speeds with nearly every 3 months or so. But the last couple of years, everybody has noticed that processors don't speed up that much anymore. We reached more or less the border of 3 gigahertz, something like that. And the only way how you can speed up calculations of your computer is by using 64-bit architecture and multi-threading. The downside of this is that it requires a completely different architecture of the software, and that's something that we have been working on since a couple of years now. For concrete, this has been going on. Unfortunately, we can only show the results once it's completely done. You have seen already the first results of multi-threading calculation in the timber module, which was released in version 2012. But for concrete, we're nearly there. The architecture is more or less refactored, and you will see the first results in a couple of months. Maybe in the version 14, we will already be able to provide completely new 1D concrete functionalities in the software, which lead to speeds up to 50 to 500 times higher than what is currently possible. Now, this doesn't mean that we're not working on concrete or are not able to do concrete in the meantime. What we did, for instance, for our international regions, for instance in Brazil, is introduce a 1D concrete for the Brazilian design code in version 2000.0 for 1D members, and we will have also functionalities for 2D members in this release 2013.1. I'm just going to show you a small example in Scia Engineer. So in Scia Engineer, where we had, for instance, in our service, concrete service in 13.0 only the 1D member functionalities, you will see that from this version on, 13.1, we will also have 2D concrete for Brazil in the 2D members. Of course, this only applies when you have set the national code for Brazil as your design code. In other functionalities or other design codes, it's still the same situation as before. Now, what is new? You can see this as a kind of a pilot for futurization of concrete. What is new is that we are able here in this Brazilian 2D concrete to calculate the reinforcement for the slabs. Right? For instance, for these slabs, I can calculate the reinforcement based upon a single selection, so a single magnitude. According to the ultimate limit state, you can use internal forces of the surface of the center and then calculate the reinforcement in all the required directions for the upper and the lower layers. So you can use a single selection. If you use the single selection type, then only one of those values can be used to calculate your reinforcement. But it's also possible to have a multi-selection, where then can be used multiple magnitudes for the calculation of the reinforcement. However, the magnitudes can only be drawn in the 3D window for one single magnitude. That's, I think it's quite obvious. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to know what is what. Yeah. Okay, so I can just show you a small refresh. And in the preview, as well as in the document, you will have all the values which you need for verifying the calculation. Yeah. Okay. So far for Brazilian concrete. Just go back. Where were we? A little bit further. Okay, over here. Now there are a number of other improvements that we did besides the improvements for Brazilian concrete. Is the introduction of the national annex for Sweden was one of the national annexes which was still missing. We also introduced an interaction diagram method for particular members, where we had already the functionality for extreme value versus the check value in version 2012 for normal reinforced concrete. We also now have it for pre-stress services, and we have the possibility to import non-calculated internal forces, which is also a feature used by a number of clients. Okay, then we come to the subject of steel design in version 2013. Well, in steel, it's more or less the same question or the same topic. that we also try to refactor the code as soon as possible to make full benefit of all the technological advances in hardware. We already have finished the refactoring of the section checks, and not only did we refactor the architecture or the source code to make full benefit of 64-bit and multi-threading, we also took particular interest in making the output more transparent. Especially for steel, this can be seen directly already today. You will not have the benefit of 64-bit and multi-threading yet. We first need to finish the stability checks as well before we can apply all those speed improvements. But you will have already the improved and more transparent output in the steel connections. And I will show you just a few examples of this. So classification in the output plus was split. I will just directly go to the examples and show you what was in previous versions and what is in the new version, so you can see immediately. So one of the things which you could see in the previous versions, for instance, if we did Unicode 3 section 1.1 code check, that there is a partial safety factor and it is repeated a number of times in the output. In fact, yeah, this is redundant information. We all know that the gamma M0 and M1 and M2 are partial safety factors, so there is no need to really put it in the output. For now, there is still the gamma M0, but it will be replaced by the Greek symbol so that you have the same annotation in the output of Scia Engineer as is in the design code for the Unicode. Also, we for the section check we did some classification. Class cross section is 3 and class cross section is 1. The one this section, the class for the cross section 3 is on position 0 meters and the cross section 1 class is on 6 meters, but you did not know exactly which class was used where. We did improve this in version 13.1, and here you can see, so this redundant information has been moved. We also specify which national annex we are using, so if it's standard EN or another, it's clearly specified at the beginning of the check so that everybody knows what we're talking about. For the section check, we specify immediately where the section check has been executed on position 6 meters. And then we do the classification for the cross-section design according to Unicode 3 section 1.1, according to article 552. And then we do it for the internal compression parts, and we do it for the outside flanges. And based upon these two infos, we know that the section is classified as class 1 for cross-section design. So you know for cross-section design, it's the class 1. Very clear. Because of the fact that we do it over here clearly specified, we do not need to repeat before every check what class is used. So for the compression check, before there was a section classification 1, section classification is 1. It was repeated every time. We don't do it anymore. It's clear with the previous part that it's a class 1, so we can immediately go to the checks itself. Now for compression check we had a value NCRD, which was only put in the output along with the unit check. Problem was that it did not give us that much information, this actual force, which area was used to calculate the stresses. Now in version 13.1 we clearly give the surface area which is used, the NCRD, and then the unity check, so that if you want to check it by hand, if you want to do some pre-verification of the values Scia Engineer is outputting, you can do so. For the shear check, it's more or less the same story. We just outputted VCRD, but okay, which eta value was used, which shear area was used, is it a plastic or an elastic value? Okay, we know that we can do a plastic check because it was a class 1, but it's more clear if we output it like this. So you get the eta value, you get the shear area, you get the plastic shear force, and then we do the unity check. For the bending moment, more or less the same. MCRD was in version 13.0, and in 13.1 we clearly show the plastic resistance, the plastic moment, and then the unity check. And then for combined bending, axial force, and shear force, it was even worse. There we did the annotation the moment reduced for normal force and shear force, but in certain cases you can neglect the reduction for normal force and shear force because they are too low, as is in this case. So the normal force is only 0.13 and the shear force is only 0.13. So you can neglect them. So there is no use to display the moment like this, and this is what we did in 13.1. We added some notes which clearly show you why we are neglecting shear forces and axial forces, and instead of just using this general denomination, we are using the plastic moment around the y-axis. So clear for everybody. And also, yeah, you can see the unity checks are still the same, but this is more or less normal. We did not change the approach of the calculation. We only improved the output and the transparency of all the values that we put in the output. And for stability check, it's also first displayed where we do the stability check, 0 meters. We give the maximum width to thickness ratio, and then we give the different limits for the classes so that you can check why it is in fact a class 3. For the internal compression parts, and the same for the outstand flanges, there we find that it's a class 1. So based upon these two, we can see that the section is class 3 for member buckling design. Yeah? Clearly specified. Now, if we look at some more examples for tension, yeah, we did it in the entire section checks, of course. You see that this formula applies, where the NTRD depends on the minimum of the design plastic resistance of the cross section and the design ultimate resistance of the net cross section. Those two values are important to know how you calculate this formula. In previous versions, we only outputted NTRD, where in the new version we did an upgrade. We we display the area which is used. We display the two values and plastic RD and ultimate RD, and based upon those two values, we decide which one is the NTRD, and we do the unity check. Yeah. Okay, for compression, it's more or less the same story. There are a lot of examples in this presentation. I will also include this presentation with all the examples along with the recording so that you can go through it and see exactly where all the differences have been performed, the new upgrades. Maybe this one is also an important one for bending. We displayed MCRD for class 1, 2, 3, and 4. Where there is a big difference. In class 1 you have to use a plastic value, the same for class 2. In class 3 it's elastic, and in class 4 there we don't really have a specific denomination, so there we are still using the MC. Yeah. The other examples, I will leave them up to you. You can check them afterwards. If you have questions, that you can get back to us afterwards. Yeah. Okay. Just skip a number of topics until I end up with fire. See, there are a lot of examples where you can really see what has changed. Okay, so fire data was pretty limited info in the setup in version 13.0 and previous versions. This was revised and extended in version 13.1, where you can see that we extended the setup. We introduced more values that you can see, and if you put the required fire resistance according to the setup, a number of values will automatically be taken from the code, and they will be adapted if you change, for instance, the fire exposure to 1 side, 2 sides, 3 sides, or all sides. That's something new. Also, setup description and modifications for every setup in Scia Engineer 13.1 and later versions. You will see at the bottom that there is a reference, a description, and an application field where we give more info about what you are currently selecting. So verify only section checks, then you can see which reference this is. what the description is for this functionality or parameter and how it's applied. Now, next to the Unicode improvements that we did in the output, there were also some other steel improvements that we did. There was a general demand since, let's say 2 years now, for supporting the AISC version 2010. Up to now, we only had the 2005 version. We did make some effort to also include the 2010 version. Now, it's still there. The older versions, 2005 and the 89 version for LRFD is still there because it's still used in the US as well. So you still have the option. We did put the AISC version 2010 as the default from now on, but if you want, you can still switch back to the version 2005 or even the previous versions. That's completely up to you. They're there, but for now we will use the version 2010 as a default. Yeah. What is new is the profile library editor, and this is something that people who are working with Scia Engineer and especially in with bar models, beams and columns, they use the profile library quite a lot. Now, what did we do? I will show you live in Scia Engineer. If you go into Tools, there you have the option Edit Profile Library. And we did some modifications in this. Now you have a small dialog where you can pick an existing type, for instance, all the profiles which are currently there. Let's say we take an IPE, or you can just input it over here, IPE, and we do edit. No, I have to use capital letters probably. Then you will end up in a completely new profile editor where you have some image, where you have all the values for all the different profiles in this family of IPEs. And they are completely selectable, so you can copy these values into Excel to do some manipulations. You could even copy values from Excel back into this profile library editor. So it's a complete compatible approach with between Scia Engineer Profile Library Editor and Excel. Of course, if you're going to override these values, then they become user values, and I'll get back to that just afterwards. You can also opt, for instance, to create a new type. Let's say that this is a webinar type, and you can have the form codes, which are already available in Scia Engineer, as a kind of a basis, kind of a template, and where they will be stored. Now you can see here that there is a profile library and a user library. And to show you this, I will go into the setup. And in the setup, under options, in the tab directories, for profile libraries, you will now see that you have the possibility to specify a different path for the profile library and a different path for the user library. And this path for user library can be anywhere. So you can even put it on a server inside your company, so that, for instance, all the profiles which are defined inside the company and differ from the ones that we send to you by default, that it can be used company-wide. This also allows us to keep your proper profiles intact when we update our profile library. So it's a better and a more manageable approach of profiles in Scia Engineer from now on. Yeah. I all invite you to have a look at the new profile library editor. It's Peter van Tendelo's works. You probably all know him. And if you have some good comments, let me know. Okay, let's go back. So the profile library editor, very important. It's the basis of everything, but it's not that it's rocket science, of course. Okay, steel connections, also a topic which we are working on quite hard. You know that the steel connections in Scia Engineer have been there since many years. It was one of our USPs in the past. We know that due to some priorities in the last couple of versions, there was not so much development in the steel connections functionality, but we put it a little bit higher on the list, and some work has been done on the steel connections. In 2013, I might have shown you already that we apply the transparency improvements not only in concrete, not only in steel, but also in the steel connections, where you could see, for instance, that in version 2012 and before, we only had limited info in the output, which was considerably extended in later versions. You can see only FTRD, and here we're giving much more info. We only displayed E, M, and N in previous versions, and in version 13.0 we already introduced some info about how the bolt rows are classified, which values are displayed, how the groups are formed, and etc. So all those values, much more info, much more possibility to do some custom verifications or some verifications by hand about the things done in Scia Engineer. In 13.1, we did some minor improvements which were already ready for release. The possibility to use 4 bolts per row. Before, this was only possible for 2 bolts per row. We have revised the calculation of the alpha factor for the VRD. We did some adjustment for groups of bolt rows, and then of course some output improvements. At the same time, so we are continuing this work not only for the beam column connection, but also for the other Unicode connections that we have in Scia Engineer. So we are continuing on these output improvements. We will also introduce new functionalities or improvements on the bolt input dialog and on other demanded topics. But at the same time, we and also external developers are working on standalone connection design solutions based upon our Scia Design Forms platform. And I can show you here one of the prototypes which is more or less finished and will be released as soon as possible, which is a beam column connection in Scia Design Forms, where you can input just the basic parameters for your connection, for the beam, for the column, for the end plate, for the bolt position, which loads apply to this connection, and then you get, based upon which layout you're choosing, a full, a brief, or a brief plus a drawing, you will get a quite extended report about all the items which are checked in this connection. This is the first one. We will use this same approach to also provide you with connection types which are currently not supported by Scia Engineer. Just because of the fact that there is no standard approach in the Unicode to have a uniform implementation in Scia Engineer, but also because they're maybe a little bit exotic or differ from the standard approach. This is something that we can handle in design forms, and which we will handle in design forms. Currently they only stand alone, but probably as of version 14, the next version we will drop in the year, so it will be just Scia Engineer 14. It will be able to link these standalone design forms with your 3D model in Scia Engineer, so that you can run these standalone checks based upon a model that you have in Scia Engineer. We have some external developers, as I mentioned before, in the US who are doing the same for US connections. So on 2 areas we are working quite hard for Unicode connections inside Scia Engineer, for Unicode connections in Scia Design Forms, and for US connections in Scia Design Forms as well. So a lot will change in the upcoming months, and hopefully in the next release we will have already an improved set of connections that you will be able to check. Okay, then we come to our reporting topic. Reporting is something very, very important. You know that this is your deliverable towards your client, and you want to have a strong report about the work you have been doing in Scia Engineer. So I think it's important to have a good tool. You all know that the old document, which was there since a long time, the active document, had some flaws, had some issues in stability as such. We already partly fixed this in version 13.0 by introducing a new engineering report, a report which uses the latest technologies available on the market and is still fully linked with the Scia Engineer model and all the results available after calculation. It is important to say that we will still support the old document. We will still support it for, let's say, a couple of versions. It's still here in 13.1. It will still be there in version 14, maybe even in version 15. But then gradually we will reduce the functionalities, and at a certain time it will be removed completely. Why? Well, we decided that we wanted to go for a new solution, the engineering report, and put all our effort in extending the functionalities in that report. So the old document will be there as it is. There will be no bug fixing, there will be no extension of the features. So it's in your best interest to gradually move on to the new engineering report. Yeah. We know that there were some missing features in 13.0, which we already fixed in version 13.1, which we'll show you live just after this. There might be some things missing, but it's up to you to give us some feedback on what is essential for your work, what is still missing in the engineering report, so we can put some a priority on developing those things. Yeah. Okay, let me show you in Scia Engineer what is new in version 13.1. Okay, so you all know that the engineering report is located by default just below the document. You can switch it on in the project data, or you can switch it off. It's up to you. When you open it, you get into the report manager where you have multiple reports available, or can create multiple reports based upon the same project. Okay, I can just open one and let's briefly go through it. Some of the highlights I will also just briefly mention. First of all, we have the header. Header can be edited. Where is he? The header can be edited with a number of, or extended with a number of data coming from the project itself. You can change the logo. You can change, for instance, the font and the color. So all those possibilities are there. You can save your header as a template and reuse it in a later document, other project, for instance. Yeah. We have the possibility to use external images. Yeah. So this is an image which is located somewhere on my hard drive over here. The path is mentioned over there. You can input this as an external picture. You can change the width, the height, so all these things are possible. Then we have our table of content. The table of content, of course, essential to give a good overview of what is in your report. Then we have some other picture. This picture was not introduced as a kind of external image. This was just a copy-paste from a website. So you can go to any website, you do a print screen, and just paste this in your document as a kind of a screenshot, yeah, which can be used. You can also have formatted text. It's called a formatted text. It's rather a free text, so to speak. Make it a little bit bigger. A free text which I have to edit it like this. Damn. It's the toolbar of the meeting which is blocking the button. So in the formatted text, you can just use it as a basic text editor and put some real text in it, formatted. So you can have this one in red, for instance. And new in version 13 on general demand is a smart preview. A small preview feature so that you can see actually what you have been doing in the formatted text without having to accept it and then see what happens in the text itself. This small preview is just something very basic. It's not rocket science again, but it helps you in already previewing what has been inputted in the text editor. Okay, let's go further to, for instance, a table with the cross sections. Yeah, cross sections is provides some data about the cross section, also provides an image. Know that in the properties of this item, you can pick a template which will display the same information in a different order. For instance, if I pick the brief one, then you will say that this automatically will give me another representation, just a tabular representation of the same value without the images. I go back to the default one. But it's even possible, if you edit this topic, this table, to change the order of the different columns, or to include this picture, the representation of the cross-section, in the table. So you can make it include in the table and reduce the paper space, in fact, which is used in your document. Yeah. If we go to the notes, for instance, I'm not sure whether the notes are already here, but let's just input them. Structure notes. The notes is also a table which is can be quite extended. If you have a lot of notes in your model, then this can take quite some space in your report. By default, not by default, in previous versions, we only had the possibility to display all the values one below the other. In version 13.1, you had the possibility to split the table, which means that if you, it's a setting which is activated by default, so the engineering report will look for the width of your table, and if it's possible to split the table and put multiple entries next to each other, it will do it. If you don't want this, then you can just uncheck this option, and then it will just display it as was before. Now in this version we only had two tables. Let me just make it a little bit smaller and make this columns a little bit smaller, so that you can see that you can really fit a maximum of information on the page. And if I now split the table, activate this, split the table, and I press OK. Maybe it's not even small enough. Well, you see that there is still some room to put another table next to it if you make them sufficiently small. Maybe I just forgot one, but it's not that important. Yeah? Splitting of tables, rather important. Okay, now another topic which is quite important, which kept some of you back of using the engineering report already. The engineering report, if I go into the results, for instance, in the past you could only have the tables indent on the topic. So if I, for instance, let's go back to our model. And let me just, for instance, take this part of the model like this, and let me display the results. Where are the results? I have to calculate it again. Also important to know is that your engineering report uses a different process than Scia Engineer. You can see that there are two applications which are open at the moment. And you can still work in Scia Engineer while in the document. You can still work in the document while in Scia Engineer. If something changes in your model, for instance, you delete, oh my god, this is not good. That can happen, of course, when doing a live demo. If some of the data is not up to date, then you see that those small exclamation marks will appear not only in your navigator but also in the report itself, which indicates that this topic is not up to date, and then you can update those topics separately. You can see if you select one of those topics, there is a small refresh button next to it, and you have full control about what you are refreshing at what time. So regardless of what you're doing, you can still refresh items. It's not like in the past that every modification led automatically to a refresh of the document. On general demand and for improved manipulation of your document and improved handling, we removed this automatic refresh. You can still do a refresh of the entire document, but it's up to you to do it when and which topics, of course. Yeah. Okay, so we are now in Scia Engineer. Okay. For some reason I don't have results, but it's not that important. I can show you over here in the report. So if we have, for instance, did we have the load somewhere over here? Now it's finished. Maybe just wait a little bit longer. Okay, now we have the results. And let's say that we are displaying the internal forces, the moments on the structure. Now we have something like this. Yeah, I'm going to set the walls to transparent. Number, select, plate, select, and let's put them into transparent so that the image is a little bit nicer. Transparent. Okay, so let's suppose that we are sending this image to our engineering report, live picture into the engineering report. Also new in this dialog to send your picture into the engineering report is the scale. Before you only had the picture width and the picture height. Now we also have a scale, so I can put it on scale 150. And decide whether to include it after the last selected item in the list or include it into the inbox. Now I'll put it in the inbox to show you that in this inbox you now have the possibility to pick this item and put it wherever you want. Or in the previous dialog, put it right at the end. So let's pick for instance our combinations. And we'll put it at the end so that we can clearly see what's happening. So the combinations are not refreshed. You can see the exclamation mark, you can see the exclamation mark. I can do a refresh and then I'll get some info about the combinations. Maybe I'll just put a brief template. It's quite long. Okay, this is just a brief display of your combinations. I can add the document picture just behind it, and then I only have one image, internal forces on the member for MY. Something which was not possible in the past is also the cropping, so you can change the picture, for instance 0.07, make it a little bit smaller, make it a little bit less high. Also the automatic scale to fit is something which was been added in version 13.1, which makes it a little bit, I have to refresh it. Also notice here the task list, so you exactly know what the functionality is doing at what time. And then we have the feature to indent them, to use the chapter maker to indent the internal forces onto the combinations. So when I refresh now, it will automatically generate a picture for each combination. So you see it automatically, the chapters have been created. You have a combination, you have a description for every combination. This was something which was missing in the engineering report in the first release, which was a big demand. We hope that by introducing pictures into the chapter maker functionality, that we solve a lot of those remarks, that you will be motivated to start using the engineer report. Of course, there are some things which are still missing, like real templates for your engineering reports. Know that there is a more or less a workaround. You can select everything which is included here in the navigator just by selecting it, and then if you open another project, you can just copy paste the content of your document into another report, and then it will automatically be filled by the information of the project in question. So there is already a possibility to reuse the layout of your engineering report in another project. That's no problem. There is no real template functionality as of now, but that's something that will be included in the next version. But for now, there is already a workaround that you can use. Okay, I think I'm more or less finished. So also in the presentation, you will see what is new. I'll just skip these items because we showed them live. Also maybe something small is the export to RTF, which allows you to maybe post-process your report in Word afterwards. It's a better export than what we had via using HTML. And also the UCS symbol in the pictures have been properly implemented. There were some cases where it was a little bit off, and in version 13.1 it's much better. Okay, we more or less came to the end of this presentation. Maybe just one last slide on some general improvements that we did. You all know that in version 13.0 we had the introduction of shortcuts, so you could assign a command to every possible functionality in Scia Engineer. If you wanted to create a beam, then you could just type beam. If you just wanted to modify this or customize this command into a B or BE, then you could do that via the options. We added one more, and that's the enter button, which will call the last used command. So if you use the beam command and you exited the functionality and just press enter, then it will automatically launch the last used command. Yeah? So that's one. We also allowed names to have more characters than in the past. In the past it was limited to, I'm not sure how many it were, but you can now use much more. You can see that it's 2 times the alphabet, so I only have, or I have a name with at least 48 characters over here. Then support for Unicode character sets. This is very important with our globalization in mind. So we will be or we are already present in Asian markets. There the description or the denominations are a little bit different, and you now have the possibility to use, for instance, Korean or Chinese character sets in both the tables and the model. Yeah? Combo box for support properties. In the support, if you tick on a support and you go into the properties, there are combo boxes to change the type of support, which make it a little bit easier. The help is accessible via the F1 functionality, and that's more or less it, yeah, as a general improvement. I would like to invite you to have a look at the release notes, which are accompanied by Scia Engineer 13.1, which is, of course, displaying all the possible new things in 13.1. We also have a What's New page, which will be issued, I think, with the next e-news, which is next week, something. And then we also have another webinar, which is coming next week, I think on the 5th of December, where we will present to you the new Scia Concrete section. It's a new tool, which is the successor of the ESA Concrete section in the past. A tool which was used by many users, but which was which got out of date because of new hardware demands, because of changes in the Unicode. This was now replaced by the Scia Concrete section, which is a standalone tool, again based upon the Scia Design Forms platform, and which we will present to you in the follow-up webinar You can register for this webinar on our blog, on our website. So I would like to invite you all to this webinar. So that more or less concludes the new things that I wanted to show you today. If you have questions, you can still put them in the chat box. In the chat box, I will still keep this session open for some time to allow you to input all your questions. The ones that I can answer directly, I will do so, and the other ones will just be grouped and put into a document which will be sent to any one of you who has registered for this webinar, along with the presentation and along with the recording of the session, or a link to the recording of the session. So that's it. I would like to thank you for your presence, and I hope to see you in another webinar. Thank you.